Right?
It's the new voice since the update.
Yeah.
So we are live. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing great. Give me just 1 second to get situated here on Facebook. And yeah, looks like it's working. I'm really excited about today. Sorry, I'm just going to do a little window management here so I can see your comments live. Here we go. Perfect. Awesome. And if you can hear us, see us, give us a thumbs up, send us a little love. I'm really, really excited today. I have a wonderful guest for you guys. Brandon Acker, guitarist. Do you say theorbo player? Lutist?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Lutenist, theorbist.
Oh, jack of all trade. um, and before we dive in, though, I want to take a quick minute and just say a few words about my brand new workshop, Practicing for Peak Performance. It's coming up August 13, 14, and 15. I'm really, really excited. This is the workshop where I'm going to share all of the tools and the strategies to reach new peaks of performance. Together, we're going to cover the mindsets and the practice systems that will have you feel confident and ready for optimal performance. You're going to know what and how to practice, how to prepare physically and mentally for any performance. I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm packing in all the information and the strategies you're going to need to feel really excited about performing. So you can find all the details for Practicing for a Peak Performance at mindoverfinger.com. And I mean, as you know, we're taught from the start to just simply put in more hours in the practice room if we want to see success. And actually, Brandon, I was just watching one of your awesome YouTube videos where you were just talking about something very similar. Like, right, it's just like practice more, practice more. But most of you have experienced how frustrating and disheartening and unproductive this is. So, with the right strategies and the mindsets, we can change all of this for you. I'm going to share with you all the details of my signature deep practice model. This is the process that so far I've only shared with my private clients and my students and the participants in the music mastery experience. It's a clear process on how to go from reading a piece to performing it with confidence. It's going to be available for you now. So much fun. I can't wait, and I really hope to see you there. Again, the info is at mindoverfinger.com, Practicing for Peak Performance. That's coming up August 13, 14, and 15, live on Zoom. And of course, replays are going to be available indefinitely. So join us. Again, mindoverfinger.com. All the information is there. And now, without further ado, here's Brandon Acker for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you. Brandon, I want you to tell us more about yourself. Of course, you're a classical guitarist, and you call yourself a specialist of early plucked instruments, which I love. So we're talking about the lute, Baroque guitar, and theorbo. And for those of you who don't know him, I got to tell you, his latest passion has been to run a YouTube channel. And you have like how many now? Over like what, 300 subscribers, like millions of
Yeah.
views?
320 something thousand.
That's
Yeah. It's
incredible.
blown up in the last couple of years. And it's really, really exciting.
It really amazing content, great videos
Thank you.
on how to practice the guitar and all of these early plucked instruments. And you also have an online school. But tell us all about you. I'm also going to change my headset because it keeps popping out because I think my ear canals are too
Okay.
small. I got new headphones. So tell us about you, about your path to where you are today, how this artistic journey has unfolded for you.
Sure. Well, it's really a pleasure to be on, and congratulations on the great podcast, Renee. Yeah. Well, so I've ended up as an early plucked instrument guy, playing music, a lot of Baroque music, especially in the last few years, which I know is a pretty esoteric field with lutes and things. But this never was my intention. I kind of like fell into one thing after the other, and that became interesting, and that led me somewhere else. And But I think I never would have expected to end up there. Sorry, there's a bit of noise outside. But basically, I began when I was around 11, playing electric guitar and in a rock band and things, and taking lessons from a guy in a trailer by a lake. And my brother and I have a twin brother, and him and I were taking lessons at the same time. And I think I only started because he started. My mom asked if we wanted to play guitar, and I was going to say no, and he said yes, so I said yes, and so I just copied him. And so I played electric guitar for some years, and then I joined in high school. I was in a really fun rock band called Fragile Utopia, and a rock metal band, and had long hair, and it was a really fun time. We wrote songs. We did 2 CDs, did a lot of concerts, and the intensity of the shows, the mosh pits, the headbanging. It was a great time, and I miss like the intensity of doing that. I would love to do it again. But so then I was doing that, and I thought, oh, I'll just do this forever, right? This is what I love. We started messing around with recording because we wanted to, record our own stuff. And so we got some microphones, and started trying to build a studio, did our own CDs. And through that process, I kind of figured out audio here and there. And so I started doing audio production. And next thing you know, it's time for college, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I end up in Chicago for a sound recording degree at DePaul University. And I needed an instrument. I wasn't planning on majoring in an instrument or anything. And so you needed to play an instrument. You need to take lessons. So pick jazz or classical. And I said, I play rock guitar. And they said, well, pick one. And I said, I know nothing about jazz. I can fake some Spanish guitar. It really fake it. Like, I don't know, just like some strumming stuff. And so I learned some music. I auditioned. I got in. And then the classical guitar teacher, Mark Maxwell, was really fantastic. He's just super amazing teacher at DePaul, still teaches at DePaul. And he really swayed me. He convinced me of the beauty of the music and the power of the classical guitar and musicality. And I fell in love with the repertoire. And then I flip-flopped. So I became a classical guitar major. I dropped a sound recording. I finished that degree, did another degree in classical guitar, a master's degree with his wife at Northwestern, Ann Waller. They're kind of like a classical guitar power couple in Chicago. And did that. And while I was doing those degrees, there was a couple opportunities to learn a bit about early instruments that I had. They did an Orfeo, a Monteverdi's Orfeo, one of the first ever big operas, and I volunteered to play guitar in it because a bunch of my friends were singing, and I knew that some vague idea that there was some type of guitars or lutes or something. So I thought, well, can I figure out how to play? And so that was kind of an experiment. Then I did it a couple times. By the time I got to Northwestern, I had started even trying it on a Baroque guitar that I was borrowing from my teacher. And Stephen Altop at Northwestern was very accommodating and getting me to play in ensembles and things. We did a couple more operas. And by the time I graduated, I started going to early music festivals and meeting people who actually specialized in early music. And that's when I learned like the amazing field that is historical performance, in terms of the research, the musicology, the improvisation that goes into it, the beautiful instruments themselves, the beautiful notation for the music. And in the last, 7 years or so, I think I've switched gears again after going from rock to switching gears to classical, and now switching gears again to kind of the early music thing. This is my current wave of just interest and passion, and so I've been learning as much as I can, studying these instruments, their how they were played, and playing with as many groups as possible. And well, that takes us to now.
That's so amazing. And that's where you and I met, right? In one of those classes of early music.
That's it.
So interesting. What I love about this so much is how you have a plan and then you just kind of follow the breadcrumbs and it leads you somewhere else. That's amazing. And just keep following and then takes you somewhere else. And I feel like it's so inspiring for anyone listening to this to see that, things don't always end up the way we expected them to, but it's just wonderful where one breadcrumb at a time, where it takes you.
And that's the hard. I think that's why it's really hard to talk to other people about, like people who are studying and things, and just to try to get when someone is asked when they're 16, 17 to, hey, decide what you want to do forever and go and do it. It's like, it's a pretty hard thing. And I think, based on my own path, it seems more about getting into some place that you can, meet good people, work with great teachers, but you don't have to know what you're going to do when you sign up for it. Cause I think it's just great to just be spontaneous and follow, your passion, wherever that goes.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of okay with the idea of change, and maybe I'll change again. And at some point, I don't know, but I think it's important to stay open and follow your, wherever your passion sort of leads you.
Yeah. And you go from like headbanging in the rock group to playing lute on the best stages in Chicago with some of the best ensembles, which is so incredible and wonderful.
It's great that there is an opportunity to play. I mean, that's the other thing. I wouldn't have known 10 years ago that you can do concerts, playing theorbo and lute. I didn't even know it was happening in Chicago. And so, yeah, I think I was lucky as well that I was in a good place that could then, there were ensembles, you could actually play with really fantastic players like yourself. So.
Yes. Let's switch gear a little bit. And for all of those of you watching, know that you can post some questions if you have questions for Brandon. I'm looking at the chat right here, keeping an eye on it. So anything on your mind, let us know. And Brandon, this is the Mind Over Finger podcast. Let's talk about practicing a little bit
Yeah.
and performing. I was watching one of your really great video, actually. And I think that I could even, I'll do that later. I'll put the link in the Facebook group. And of course, when this is a podcast episode, I'll put in the show notes, but there's so much amazing content on your YouTube channel. So I was watching about a video in March about practicing, and I was like, yes, like I agree with all of this. This is right up my alley. I love this. So, and another amazing thing about what you do, you've talked about how you're so versatile. So you could do rock, jazz, classical, Baroque, all of this stuff. And I'm sure that there's so much we can learn from you in terms of versatility, in terms of like the cross pollination on how the skill transfer works, how these skills reinforce one another, and how that works in the practice room. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's something that's hard to talk about, I think. So I'll try to think out loud about it a little bit, because sometimes people ask, like, they say, like, how do you play different instruments, and how do you find time? Do you balance your time? Do you do 20 minutes on this instrument and then 20 minutes on the next, or something? I think it's important to spend a good chunk of time on each one for a while. Yeah, I'm talking about like a couple of years where you're really invested in an instrument, and then you kind of move on. And after a while, you have these different gears that allow you to switch between them, I think. But, in terms of being versatile and allowing that sort of thing to happen, I think a lot of it has to do with just, it comes down to interest. Where do your interests pull you, and are you willing to adopt, to go down a new path? I mean, when I was an electric guitar player, I was pretty set on, this is what I was going to do forever. Like, this was it. I found my thing. I felt like I could play, like it felt good to play, and I was like, oh, this is my thing. I found it. But then you learn, I my ear was exposed to classical guitar, and I heard something that I couldn't reproduce on my instrument. And I heard these techniques and this music that was so profound, and it was hitting me emotionally in a place where that rock music never touched. And it was just pure, ignorance of knowing about these emotions, these other possible emotions. That kind of, especially in high school, you get into your clique and your bubble, your little paradigm, and you think anything that's not there is not good, And I think a really important lesson is learning that how, like, the bubble, you're always in a bubble, and there's something just outside the bubble that you would love if only you knew about it. And so that thing I discovered, one of them was classical guitar. And I thought, oh my God, the emotions, the techniques, this music is so unreal. And I just was obsessed with it. And of course I thought, this is what I'm going to do forever. This is my new instrument. And but of course, when you learn classical guitar, it only makes you a better electric guitar player. And I think
Mhm.
I couldn't have learned classical guitar if I didn't already spend so many years working so hard to play electric guitar well. And but it was with classical guitar that I learned really how to practice. I had no aim and direction. I was just going off of intuition with electric guitar. So I definitely think that having one instrument and stepping to another is always easier. Especially any understanding of music itself. Music transcends any of the tools we use to make music, and so any musician who's experienced in one instrument will have an easier time picking up another. So and also it's the same notes. Classical guitar and electric guitar, they're the same notes, same strings. In terms of the nominal tuning, the proportions of the instrument. And then, of course, I did it again going to the Baroque guitar and then segueing to theorbo and all the different types of lutes and early instruments. It's just, it's like my previous instrument, except that string's tuned to a fourth, not a major third. Oh, these strings are doubled, but otherwise it's the same. The physics of the strings are
Mm.
the same. The music is the same. The details change. And so I think that how can one play the lute? Well, if you play the guitar, you're going to have a much easier time. If you start from the lute from scratch, I don't know anybody who just picked up the lute and started from scratch. I'm sure it was common, you know, 400 years ago. But today, that's just kind of how one discovers the lute is through the guitar. And so, I guess to just put an end to that thought is just I think versatility comes from spending a lot of time passionately studying something and then hopping to something that's adjacent. That's not completely new because you can kind of comprehend it and instantly play the thing or whatever the maybe analogy could be. And then you keep doing that, and before you know, if you keep hopping to enough adjacent things, then you are quite versatile without really ever that being the aim. You
Mm.
know.
It's very elegantly put. And it's so true what you're saying because in order to have skill transfer, you need to have a certain level of skill acquired first. It makes so much sense.
Hmm.
And I mean, even for a musician to jump from piano to violin, there's already the skill of reading the notes, understanding
Mm-hmm.
rhythm, hearing the notes. Like we already have acquired and assimilated a certain level of skills. So what you're saying makes so much sense in terms of this curiosity that you're talking about, acquiring those skills and then being able to transfer them. I love what you said about curiosity because this is what's at the root, I think, of all efficient practice is how curious, invested, interested we are.
Totally. I think you need to have this inquisitive mind to always be so curious. Well, why does that string tune that way, and what does that mean? For my fingering, or we hold the bow like this. Well, what does that mean for if I held it like that? Or I mean, I shouldn't use a bow analogy since I know nothing about bows. But I mean, it's asking the questions, and I think a lot of topics. I don't know about your experience, but even outside of music, a lot of topics that are seemingly uninteresting, just start asking questions about them, and suddenly they become interesting. I mean, I couldn't have cared less about how a kitchen is put together or what type of countertops you can choose until right now I'm renovating my kitchen, and now my brain is completely into countertops and backsplashes and things that are now suddenly totally fascinating because I know more about it. So
Mhm.
I know you know enough to tickle your interest, and I think that's one of the things about learning an instrument and music, especially if you're studying a repertoire that is profound, like so much of the classical repertoire is. It's if you just start asking the right questions about the music, about the instruments, like get ready because you need multiple lifetimes to exhaust that. In terms of how much you could learn there. So the rabbit hole goes as deep as you want it to go, and it takes a person to start asking questions. I think to start down that path.
And I really love what you said about being in a bubble and then becoming aware of something outside of this bubble. So remaining curious once again and open minded to all of the amazing experiences that can reside outside of where we are right now.
Mm.
And I remember reading at some point about how actually step zero is not knowing about something. That if you know of something, even if you know nothing about it, knowing of it is already the first stage
Mm.
to increasing your knowledge. And I feel that it's such a hopeful perspective. Think about it in the practice room. as your awareness increases, at times you realize, wait, I don't know anything about vibrato, but I'd like to vibrate. And then you feel maybe overwhelmed by how much you don't know about vibrato. But hey, you've heard about vibrato. Now you know that it exists. The journey is beginning. This is
I
very
like that.
exciting. Yeah. So I really like what you're saying about this. Anna says, I totally resonate with the idea to need several lifetimes to follow each curious thought. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think we
I think it
both.
was also like it was Bertrand Russell in his book on happiness speaks about speaks about that. The one of the cures to one of the ways to ensure that one is lives a happy life is just to be interested in things. You know, you're waiting at the doctor's office, and especially in today, you have no phone. You know, and maybe your phone's dead. You could easily go, oh, I can't check my Facebook or whatever. But like if you just look around, and now like for example, now my brain would go, huh, which wood is that on them that these floors are made of? Huh. I wonder how they did that. Or why is there a pipe there? Like why I wonder if they planned on that, if that was a discovery and a renovation. And so if you just get interested in your surroundings, you can never be bored. You know, and boredom
Yeah.
is one of the problems with in life, one of the things we encounter. And so just being interested in things is actually one of Bertrand Russell's ways to live a happier life.
Yeah. Yep. Just having this awareness, this, um, I call it bare awareness. What do you see and where can it take you? This is so
Hmm.
great. Absolutely. Like I remember even before I moved to Chicago, when I knew I was moving to Chicago, all of a sudden I was hearing about Chicago from everywhere. I had
Yeah.
never heard so much about Chicago in my whole life. But, it's that confirmation bias, I know it's the wrong analogy, but once you are aware of something, you start to really see it everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in one of the videos, you were talking about, I think it's the same one that I just mentioned, the 5 obstacles in the practice. And I resonate with those so much. I make notes of them. So you have the, you know, first exposing your great weaknesses.
Yes.
And I feel like that can be tough for some people at times. Um, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I think it's so interesting.
Well, I think it's definitely one of the barriers to the to a lot of people's progress on an instrument. I mean, I think in general we have a tendency to do things that make us feel good, right?
Mm,
And so we avoid the bad and we search for the good. And so if you're learning an instrument and maybe you're not that experienced and you can play that one chord, which is the opening chord of a song, and the first time, I mean, when you're teaching, you see this, you see someone go from scratch and they play that chord or that little lick from the song and you see their eyes light up like I made the sound from that song, and it's just a fantastic moment, and you can tell that they're so gratified suddenly. But if you tell them to then, okay, now we're going to learn the next chord, and then they struggle and they seem frustrated, and now they're not having a good time. I mean, clearly the highlight of the lesson was when they got it right. So they go home
hmm
and what do? They do the part that felt so good again and again and again, because it's that dopamine button to go like, yeah, I want to feel good about what I'm doing. But then maybe in a week they still don't have the next thing because they're only doing the thing that felt good. And so I think in general we have a tendency to focus on to replay the things that we already can play well and then neglect the things that actually need the work. And so instead, what I try to do with my students and mostly myself is sit down and say, what am I the worst at? And that's what I practice, because I know I can do the other things, and I can, if I'm just going to have fun and play for fun, I can know, okay, I'm going to have fun at this moment. You speak about, intention, setting an intention and things. I've read a bit about that. And one of the intentions I like to set is, yeah, exactly. What am I going to do today? Am I going to be having fun or rolling up my sleeves and really getting to work? And if I'm actually going to be practicing, then I should say, well, what am I not good at? And then you go to that, because at the end of the day, once you've lowered up the lowest, link in the chain, or that's a bad analogy, but you know what I mean, that if you have this a series of tasks you need to be able to, or techniques you need to be able to play on an instrument, if you make the worst one a bit better, you're now an overall better musician, because your
Yeah.
weakest link isn't super preventive. It isn't causing you to bomb in the middle of your piece. You can at least make it through.
Yeah.
So I think that's a powerful way to think. I heard that years ago from a bass player in a rock band, was said that I always try to practice what I'm the worst at. And I realize that's a pretty hard thing to actually do, especially if you're looking for, to be happy about the experience. But I think in the end, it produces the best results.
Yeah. And I think if we reframe this as tackling those things as the road to freedom, it's the road to artistic freedom. If
Hmm.
I reinforce this, I'm already amazing at that, you know? I can already do this really well. Now let's acquire more freedom in these other areas.
Hmm.
And I think it's, it's just we're so affected negatively by the things we can't do.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to allow ourselves this room to grow and see that it's such a long journey. And as Anna was saying, it's almost as if like we need several lifetimes to know everything there is to know. So if we treat everything with, I'll bring again, curiosity and beginner's mind, this desire to learn more, then not being excellent at something becomes a game that is
Hmm.
fun to play. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that this is just a healthy way to think about. Uh, Again, I think that most things in life, actually. I don't know about you, and you've been thinking so much about and talking about so much about practicing. But one of the things I'm learning about this is so many of these rules or tips or however you want to describe them apply everywhere. It's just I think it has to do a lot with human psychology and just how we work in general as people to make progress and learn. But so certainly, I would emphasize that to any person who's you know trying to get better at an instrument. Just make a list. What are you not good at that you could be, and start there. And in a few months, I think if you keep doing that, your playing will be unrecognizable.
Yeah. It's like, what am I going to be amazing at next?
Yeah. And another reason why that's so great is because then it's infinite. I mean, we talked about the limitless, the amount of lifetimes you would need to actually explore the full domain of each of our instruments, and it's because there's too much to accomplish in one lifetime. And that, but if we only stick with the things that we're good at, then now it's very limited. Now we're going to get bored pretty quickly and burnt out with the thing because it's not going to be great forever. A
Yeah.
C major chord is beautiful, but not forever. What if I'm not good at a C minor chord? Well, once I'm good at it, you can appreciate and value it musically and not just as a technique. And so
Yes.
you get through the technique. You have to, I think that's a big topic as well, getting through the technique, transcending that to get to the music itself. And that's where the art begins.
Yes. I love that. Brandon, I have a question for you. A few weeks ago, in one of the lives I did here in the community, I shared some information about a new practicing technique from a new study that came out on June 8th about giving ourselves little rests when we practice. And I feel like it's magical. Actually, I borrowed the term from Anna herself, who was talking about how magical it was, and I agree with that. And um, in that live, uh, another listener was Jonathan was asking me to share, my findings about this. So I shared this information with you, and now I would like to know, having read about this little 10-second of rest tip, and for those of you who are just hearing about this the first time, is a studies that came out June 8th, as I said, that shows that when we do repetitive work, if we interrupt the repetitions after 10 or 30 seconds or a few repetitions, if we interrupt these repetitions with a 10-second mindful rest. So we're not watching our phone, we're not making lists, we're not analyzing, we're not problem solving. That when we're just in this state of wakeful rest, the brain replays the passage that we've been working on at 20 times the speed. And I've started to try it in my practice, and I thought it was just incredible. And I'd love to get your opinion on that. Now that I think you've tried it a few times.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by this actually. I had never heard about it until you mentioned it. And so I started integrating it into my practice over the week, and I think it's incredibly important. I think this is going to be something that I do from now on
Hmm.
for several reasons. I mean, I tried it first, and then I read the article and listened to the podcast you sent me about it. After I actually tried it, you just told me that just the basic idea, just 10-second breaks, so I just started doing it, and I thought it was fantastic because I myself have struggled with like a what do you call it? Stress issue in my hand, repetitive strain injury. There we go. Where I've used to have 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my hand got so tight that I couldn't, like, I could barely even like wash my hair. It hurt. Like it was just like this rock of a hand. And so I had to figure out how to solve that. And I went to a lot of physical therapists and no one could really help me. It was all about technique. And so I had to completely redo my technique. And in the process, I'm very much more body aware and aware of where tension exists and how to eliminate that tension. And adding this component of 10-second break upon repetitions is great, because for me, the biggest reason was because it's a moment to just stop and go, how do I feel? Not just how was that, but how do I feel? How's my posture? Where's my head? Am I breathing? Is my hand flexed, or did I let the tension from the activity dissipate before doing it again? And instead of just diving in and giving myself 1 second to do that, you just have to take 10 seconds and breathe, and then start again, and you're just a bit more fresh, and you have a moment to reflect. And so I think even if I didn't even know about this amazing study, and then there's this, that you're reviewing what happened 20 times the speed. If I didn't even know that, I would be doing this. But then there's that. And so I think I've yet to test in a performance setting, how that works if you practice that way. But for me so far, that's the first thing I noticed. And I'll be really interested to see what the long-term effects of practicing like that will be.
Yeah. Isn't it fun? I just
Totally.
love discovering new techniques, and I experience exactly what you just said. So precisely, I don't know what my brain is doing when I'm resting. I don't have the awareness of what mechanisms are active in my brain as I rest, but I do come back of that 10 seconds of rest, recommitted, reinterested, rested, and more present, with my intentions renewed. And I mean, sometimes I start laughing because I'll be practicing a run or whatever. It just a few days ago, I was practicing the opening of the last movement of Schumann 2, which is a really quick first violin lick. It's just like 4 lines. Just 4 lines that are hard in the whole movement. And I was just fumbling a little bit. And then I was like, wait, let's try this tip. And it just works. And I would laugh and be like, oh my gosh, this is just fabulous. But I mean, it's like you said, even without knowing that the brain is replaying things at 20 times the speed, the presence and the intentionality that it creates for me in that moment is just wonderful.
Exactly. I kind of feel also when I did it. I mean, maybe this is more of a maybe it was like I was thinking about the research, and I was trying to perceive, like, knowing that your brain is doing this 20 times the speed of what you just played. I kind of stopped and I kind of just imagined what I just played, and I kind of realized, and I don't know how much this maps onto actually what's happening in the mind, but I kind of realized it's very easy to take note of what just happened, but in a very short span of time. You think, okay, all that was good except for that part, and all that was good except for that part, and that was a buzz, and I rushed that note, and you can really conceive of all of that in like a second. But it takes obviously maybe 20 seconds to play it. So just sitting down and taking stock I think is so important, because I think I at least have the tendency to dive in again
Yeah.
before maybe I allowed myself to even realize, do I need to practice that again? Was that section good? Am I now overdoing it? Which is another problem with, if you have tension. Number one, you're not allowing the tension to dissipate before you try again. But two, maybe you kind of get lost in the goals.
Yes.
When I'm recording a lot, I kind of lose objectivity, and often I'll record something like for 20, I keep saying nowadays I'm saying 20 a lot, but 20, 30 times the amount of times I actually needed to record it. I record way more than I need to, but I got it the first time.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
kind of lose that objectivity. And I think those little rests and taking a break and listening back, I think there's something really important here that I'm going to certainly explore more. Yeah.
I love that. I was comparing it to a bit like a sandstorm of thoughts, or like a snow globe. Sometimes when I do repetitive work, exactly as you said, I get caught in overthinking, overanalyzing. There's so many things we're controlling at the same time and trying to analyze, and
Mm.
the bow stroke and the intonation and the vibrato and how we feel physically and the sound quality. And then things just start to, spiral. And then taking that, just for me, I think I close my eyes, and it's no longer than maybe a deep breath. I just close my eyes and I take a big inhale or big inhale and big exhale, not one or the other, both. And when I come back, all the clutter has cleared. And now I'm more objective and just more clear headed.
Mm.
The snow globe analogy, all the flakes are now down and the
Mm.
picture is clear. And we try again. And I feel like things align so well. It's really incredible.
I mean, I'm a big fan of how you tie in mindfulness into the way you talk about practicing and with your podcast. I'm a huge fan of and proponent of mindfulness meditation myself, and I don't do it nearly enough, but I've done it enough to know the benefits are extreme, and in terms of stress and playing and clarity and successful performance. Just simply being present sounds like such a simple, superficial thing, but it's totally profound, especially considering how much we are lost in thought about the past or the future, and therefore anxious about it. And I think that ties into our to playing an instrument so explicitly. I mean, performance anxiety is very much about being afraid of what's going to happen in the future. And
Mhm.
what's the cure to performance anxiety? It's being present. And
Yes,
practicing well, it's all about being present and actually analyzing what's happening. That's why you can't watch TV while you practice or listen to the radio when you practice or whatever. You can't be distracted, because if your mind isn't thinking about the sound you're making, the intention of the practice session, then what are you really doing? You actually might be doing the opposite. You might be ingraining something you don't want. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And what's very interesting for me as I coach more and more, as I grow as a person, and also as I deep more and more into life coaching,
hmm,
is how the mindfulness aspect is not just a bonus on top of the practicing. It's really must be there with us all the time, because we are so action oriented as musicians. That's the issue. We just pick up the instrument and we just do, and we get really caught in the action of doing
hmm,
things. And it's understanding what is the thinking process between everything, because the way we think is what creates the way we feel, and that really affects how we take action, the things we do and the things we don't do, and ultimately comes with us on stage. All of our thoughts are with us on stage as we're playing. So
yeah,
getting this leverage over the way we're thinking, the habitual thoughts that we choose to believe every day,
yeah.
and getting this awareness really starts to change everything in how we practice and how we show up on stage. So for me, it's been just a wonderful journey.
Only good things can come from being present.
Yes. Brandon, I'd like to keep you here all day. And for those of you who've joined us since we started, don't hesitate to put in your questions if you have anything to ask Brandon. But I'd like to get to the rapid fire question part
Oh,
of
sure. Here we go.
this interview, because it's never so rapid, actually.
I can try to shorten answers if it helps.
Yeah. Um, I'd like to know, what's a habit that you think contributed to your success?
Well, you know, a lot of times when I hear people talk about something they do that that has become sort of their thing or their job or their passion, I've heard people so elegantly describe, and this is my process. And when I was 5, I knew this. And as you can tell from my story, like I've been living sort of spontaneously and just seeing what comes next and what's interesting. And then you kind of go, I just got to go there. So I haven't really had a plan
Mhm.
that has led me anywhere, that a grand plan that I pulled off to do any of the things that I'm doing that I want to do. So I think if I think about the thing that if you took that away, nothing else could work, would be just allowing yourself to completely get lost in an activity, find in that state of flow where time ceases to exist and you forget to eat and it's like, what time is it? Finding that thing that, whatever it may be that you completely get lost in, and then just allowing that to happen, I think is the thing that if I didn't have that, I couldn't do any of the things I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I didn't sit down and decide I'm going to practice X number of hours a day. I really am fascinated by these instruments, and I
Mhm.
just kind of pick them up and start playing. And most of my life playing instruments has been just about enjoying them and getting lost in them and asking those curious questions and finding people who know more than I do about it and picking their brains and then getting more inspired and then more inspired and just yeah. And then of course that's nice. But then when you find people and you read enough to find out that you can actually structure that session, you can mold it into something even more productive, like what we're talking about now with little tricks like this 10-second break, um, doing things like setting intentions before you start. If you can find that state of flow and be totally absorbed in that practice session, but also do these like kind of structural things to make it even more productive, the passion plus the structure equals you know limitless results.
Oh, I love that. This should be a sticker. The passion plus the structure equals, what was it? Limitless.
Limitless results, yeah.
Is that already a sticker? Because if it's not, we're gonna get it
I think
done.
we're gonna make it.
Yes,
We're
let's do it.
gonna get matching tattoos.
And then we'll go, listen to some rock bands and
There we go.
yes, there you go. This is beautiful. So, do you have a favorite tool in the practice room?
Yeah, I would say my metronome. I've kind of been reacquainted with it in the last 2 years. Last year, I got a new teacher. After I haven't had a steady teacher since I finished my master's degree in 2014, and so I another thing I did during the pandemic, besides starting this online music school with my wife, was sign up for lessons. I started taking 2 hours a week with a theorbo player in Spain,
Mm.
who is one of my favorite players, Javier Diaz Torre, and we call him Xavi. I'm not used to saying his full name. Um, and I've been taking lessons, and it has completely reinvigorated my mind for hearing how somebody else hears music. And one of the things that I've had to relearn was the importance of rhythm and how easy it is to fall into the trap of thinking you're just being free and using a rubato when actually maybe you're not counting that section correctly, or you're losing the overall sense of the big beat, the taktus. And so it's been sort of revolutionary in my playing to kind of become reacquainted with the metronome as a core component of every practice session. So for me, when I tell my students, because so often they don't do it, when I tell them to use the metronome, I tell them like to practice means grab the. I'm going to practice now. Where's my metronome? That should be like your first thought. There we
Okay.
go. Mine's on my phone, but it's helpful to have a real one, I think, also. And so I think to pull that out and to turn it on and let's just say now I'm practicing. For me, it's the sound of practice is to hear a metronome. So I think make good buddies with it because it yeah. Same as being present. Only good things can come from using a metronome.
Yeah. And I'm taking note as you're talking because it makes my brain fire so many ideas, which is why these rapid fire questions are never so rapid.
Right.
Because what's emerging for me in everything that you're saying is I think that you are a lifelong learner. And I see myself as that as well. I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. And I skipped one of the questions because I felt like asking you what skills you think musicians studying today should acquire in addition to learning to play their instruments had been answered already. But I think that you would agree with me that if they develop one skill, it could be to remain committed to learning and to
Mm.
remaining curious. It's just I love what you're sharing about taking this time to expand yourself as a person and as a musician. And I agree
Who
with you
was
on the
it?
metronome.
Yeah, I forget who they asked it to. There was some elderly musician who was, had a, by the time they were 30, they were world famous, and now they're 80 or something. And they were asked, so how do you spend your days? And they said, I think it was Julian Bream, the guitarist. They said, well, how do you spend your days? He said, well, I'm practicing. And why? You kind of played all the repertoire and you played everywhere and recorded all this repertoire. You were so successful. What are you practicing? He's like, well, I think I'm getting better, so
Mhm.
I'll keep doing it. I mean, exactly. That's the whole point about the multiple lifetimes thing. There is no one's ever achieved. They never reached the top and say, I did it. I accomplished my instrument as far as it could go. And okay, now what? And I'm so happy that there is no summit
Yeah.
to this mountain that we're climbing. It's infinite. And that if there was a summit, you could just get there and then there was objective end to it, it wouldn't it wouldn't be an art. Uh, and so that the fact that it's endless is what makes it such a great, worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you on the metronome. I love the metronome. This one episode on the podcast where violinist Leila Yosefovich was sharing that she sees the metronome as this wonderful kind of a straitjacket
Mm,
that once you take it off, you experience such freedom,
yeah,
because it develops such a really strong pulse and inner core and understanding of the rhythm, not physical inner core, but the
right.
rhythmical inner core. And then that once you turn it off, it's like it's there, it stays with you and it's assimilated. Yeah, this is really great.
Just one more comment about the metronome. I think what's one thing I wish I would have known before is that just because you're doing rubato doesn't mean it's time to turn the metronome off. And just because you're playing with the metronome doesn't mean you're not playing musically. So
Mm,
you should be able to play, I think everything, almost everything you can play, rubato included, even if you're playing Chopin, with a metronome on. So one of my tasks with a metronome, even if in a piece that's has rubato, is just to go to the biggest beat I can possibly play. So like 30 BPM, it's the downbeat of each measure. And then I structure my rubato so that if I'm going to pull and push, I do so, but the big beat still exists. And
mhm.
I think that's the end of rubato, is still having that general tactus, and then you purposely weave around it, but it gives you the proportion, because rubato without the bending the time around, you're bending the time around what? The tactus, the original,
Yeah.
the big beat. And if you're bending it and then there's no relation to the tempo, then now we're just playing without rhythm, which I think we shouldn't do, except for some rare music. But so metronome all the way.
Yes.
another another
I'll
matching tune.
I'll even do a shameless plug here because if you go to my website, mindoverfinger.com, you can download my guide to practicing with the metronome where I talk
Oh,
precisely about this, expanding the
perfect.
beat. It's a great technique. How about a book that you'd like to recommend to the listeners? And it doesn't have to be a music book because we know that fiction, self-help, gore, horror contributes to make us, better human beings and overall contributes to the artistic uh, creativity that we have in us. So, what is a
Mm.
book that you would recommend?
Oh, there are so many I could say. Um, right now, because it's what I'm interested in, early music is my favorite subject. So at the moment, I have here a book that I've now reread, maybe, oops, maybe 3 times or so. The End of Early Music
Mm,
by Bruce Haynes. This is one that I just keep reading and learn something each time. He's a hilarious writer, and but also a fantastic musicologist, and he really puts into perspective the last 40 years or so, 50 years or so of the historically informed performance movement, the hip movement, and how we progressed, and what is this thing, this early music thing that we're doing, and why are we doing it, and how should we do it, and mixed with a lot of wit, he kind of sums that up well while teaching you a lot about how one should play and interpret Renaissance and Baroque music.
That sounds really good. Finally, how about a quick actionable tip that the listeners could implement today in their musical life?
Uh, get a, and I'm proving it because I have one here, get a practice log. For me, a good practice session is all about, really, as you say, setting intentions and then taking log of those, of how it went. I practice X, Y, and Z on this day. And then most importantly, you make discoveries in those practice sessions. So I write big, a big asterisk on the page, and in as many words as I possibly can articulate, I try to write out what is the thing that I discovered. Maybe it was something about, the slant in the hand. By rotating my hand 2 degrees more on the fretboard this way,
Hmm.
I was actually found that shifting to the right was much easier, as opposed to being totally perpendicular. This was more forced. And so I try to then say, oh, that's amazing. And so I try to articulate as many words as I can so that my future self will come back sometime and I reread my discoveries. And sometimes I forget about it. And I go, oh, yeah, I mean, I haven't been doing that. And so I have years of practice logs that I've made that I still learn from. And so my past self is teaching my future self. And at the same time, just the act of having to articulate what it is you learned, it makes you absorb it, embody that thing more than if you just had a moment of going, oh, that's cool, and then forgot about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't become a part of your playing. So practice log, that was a game changer. When I got to college, I started doing that, and suddenly I found structure and intent in my practice sessions. And I think the progress got twice you know, as fast. So
You and I could start a practice school together because we agree on everything. I agree with you with the practice log. I keep saying that it just putting it in writing takes it from the realm of the abstract to the realm of the concrete. And then you can
exactly.
observe, get leverage over it, analyze it, learn from it. S-
Perfectly said.
Can't lose with the log. You can't lose
Totally.
with the log. Another sticker right there.
we need to shop.
Yes. Brandon, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me and chat and just give us this awesome wisdom. Tell us where we can find you. Everything Brandon Acker.
Well, first off, my pleasure. This was great to see you, Renee. Hope to see you again soon. Yeah, well, currently I've been putting most of my time into two things. My YouTube channel, you can just search my name, Brandon Acker, where I do all sorts of performance videos, educational videos, and as well my new music school, Arpeggiato. It's a school we call it a school for all things that go pluck. So guitars, lutes, ouds, mandolins, etc. And we have fantastic teachers around the world. All the lessons take place online. So you can check out arpeggiato.com, arpeggio like in music, plus a T and an O. That's a school that I started with my wife at the beginning of COVID. And yeah, arpeggiato.com and my YouTube channel, the two places I would say.
Yes. I mean, they have all of these links both here in the community and in the podcast when it comes out. And I'm telling you, if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel yet, millions of views don't lie. It's really great, great content, tips on, of course, all things plucked, but practicing and mindset. And I saw that you had an episode on warming up, and I do too.
Oh,
So
oh great.
I'm telling you,
Well, I'd love to see yours.
we could merge our work. Um, and yeah, this is so great. Thanks for being with us. And
My pleasure.
I can't wait. And by the way, Brandon comes across as like so nice on YouTube and here, and he's even nicer in person. Just wanna
Oh, I thought you were going to say, but in person.
no, no, no. So I can't wait for us to have a chance to perform again together soon.
I hope so.
Yes. Thanks, Brandon, and thanks
Okay.
everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.